The New Orleans Pelicans are looking to revamp their offense, and we got the first glimpse of it Tuesday night, and the early returns are good. I'll explain why you should be happy with what we saw and why the rest of the league should be worried. It's a post-game edition of Locked On Pelicans. Let's go.
You are Locked On Pelicans, your daily New Orleans Pelicans podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of Locked On Pelicans, the daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Pelicans and NBA, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, available wherever you get your podcasts and available on YouTube. I'm your host, Pelicans Insider, credential member of the media, Jake Madison, at Nola Jake on Twitter. Here with y'all on this Wednesday, day after the Pelicans fall to the Orlando Magic 105-122. But we don't care about the final score. It's actually all about the first half. And I'm going to break down what we saw from the Pelicans offense because you know what? It was good. I've got the specific X's and O's for you on things they were doing. I've got the numbers behind it and a couple of little things you probably didn't even catch. And if the rest of the league doesn't wise up, this Pelicans team could be very, very good. And of course, thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We are here Monday through Friday for y'all, breaking down everything you want to know about this Pelicans team, the number one Pelicans podcast. No one else comes to y'all like this. So please subscribe wherever you get the podcast. Share the podcast with your friends. And if you really want to support the channel, become an everydayer. Listen Monday through Friday. Comment down below on YouTube is also cool. What was the favorite thing that you saw in this game? Let me know in the YouTube comments. Today's episode by Jase Medical, Jase case, providing you with a personal supply of 5 antibiotics that treat 50 plus infections. Get yours today at jasemedical.com. That's JASE medical.com. Let's get into it. If you listened to yesterday's show, if you're an everydayer, you know I said we want to look at the offense and see what they're capable of. And look, the early returns on the offense was good. We're not going to look at the second half of this game much because, frankly, the starters didn't play. They were playing guys that are on their training camp roster, guys that just aren't going to be on the team or have any sort of role in the NBA next year. So we've got to look at the minutes that really matter, and that's minutes with Zion, Brandon Ingram, and CJ McCollum. And while things started off a little bit slow for the team, the lineup out there, the starting lineup, was a little bit clunky at times as those three guys still gel and develop a little bit of chemistry together. Once they kind of got into their rotation and started getting other guys in, things really opened up a little bit and the offense started to, well, take flight. There were very strong concepts from James Borrego in there that you could immediately see. How much more off-ball movement did you see in this? Balanced scoring from everyone. And little off-ball movements, not just cuts to the basket to receive a pass and score, but little movements that freeze guys and things like that. All told, the Pelicans put up an offensive rating in the first half of 121.4. Last year, their offensive rating was 113.8, and that was one of the worst ones in the league. I think it was 20th in the league at 113.8. So 121.4 is a significant increase. That's about 8 points over 100 possessions. That would have been tops in the league last year. The Sacramento Kings led the league in offensive rating with 118.6. Pelicans in its preseason. It's Orlando, who's not a good defensive team. Keep that in mind. So some context around these numbers. But the Pelicans just put up 121.4. It's a significant improvement. That alone, looking at that stat alone shows you that something is working here. But when you watch them play, you could really, really see it. And it happened in two ways. There's your half-court offense when things slow down a little bit, and then your transition offense when you're playing in fast break man advantage situations. On the transition side of things, look, the Pelicans still force a lot of turnovers. They can get out there and they can run, and they did it in this game and did a very good job with that. And it led them to getting some just really easy points, getting out there, running, forcing turnovers in the first half. It slowed down in the second half, but they were able to run really well, and I liked what we saw from them. They have guys that can push in transition, and we'll talk more about that in the next segment when we talk about the Zion at the 5 lineups because, oh yeah, we saw that, and that worked shockingly well, much better than I was expecting. But in their half-court offense, which is the area they needed to improve going into this season, They did that. They did that. Brandon Ingram being aggressive, attacking the basket, putting pressure on the rim, creating for others that way. You saw guys working off ball, even if it didn't lead to an assist from him. It got that defense in motion, trying to figure out what the Pelicans were going to do. Where are guys cutting from? Multiple actions, multiple screens being set, staggered screens, elevator doors you saw, just to spring guys open and create looks. And even if they didn't shoot, well, then they passed again. And that still keeps the opponent defense moving. And that type of movement is what led the Pelicans to keeping that balanced scoring attack going. You saw it on very specific plays too, particularly around Zion Williamson, and I loved so much of this. Normally when he has the ball in his hands, it's just court gravity is how he creates room for others. You have to double team him, so that means someone is open. Okay, there was that. You saw him multiple times have the ball. Two guys went to him. He found the open man. Twice it was Herb Jones who made a couple of threes that way, which is exactly what you want to see. Herb, we'll talk more about him in the third segment, 2 of 3 from deep. Loved that. But you also saw them run some very creative actions. There was one point when he got the ball onto the left side around the three-point line, started driving forward, and you had Dyson Daniels cutting right towards him, and the defense keyed right on in to Dyson Daniels as he was cutting from the corner 3 spot. Zion whips a pass. Everyone thinks it's going to Dyson Daniels, but you also saw Jordan Hawkins curling back down to replace Dyson Daniels in the corner 3 spot. That's where the pass was going. Jordan Hawkins caught it, took a wide open 3. It was a simple, just misdirection play. This cutter comes in, someone fills that space, and you get the ball to the open man. It's little designs like that that are really going to open things up and that are really tough to defend because you have so many threats. And overall, that was kind of the theme. When you looked at how they operated in the half court, there were multiple decisions for the ball handler to make, and you didn't see that last year, and that's maybe the simplest way to put it. Brandon Ingram has the ball and is attacking. Last year, it would have just been drive, shoot, probably a mid-range. What happens, happens. Here, do you want to take it to the basket because there's space to do that? Do you want to hit it to one of the guys working off ball? You can do that. Do you want to call for a screen and try and create space that way? There were just multiple decisions for the offense to make, which means there's multiple situations the defense needs to account for and needs to be prepared for to defend. And if they guess wrong, Brandon Ingram being a smart decision maker, Zion being a smart decision maker, that's going to mean they're going to find the open man or they're going to score. So I loved everything that we did. There were a couple of times even when it's isolation and there's little wrinkles in there too that worked. You saw Zion with the ball around the free throw line, starting to drive towards the basket, help defenders starting to come over to him. In years past, it would have been Jackson Hayes on the left side in the corner, not moving, and a defender doesn't need to go out there and do anything. But this time as Zion started to move, Dyson Daniels is moving a little bit on the three-point line, and he's drawing and freezing that help defender. Off-ball movements like that to freeze defenders is brand new to this offense. More movement, and they become tougher to defend, and you saw it in this game, and that's why the offensive rating in the first half, 121.4. I'm a little fired up. I'm going to be honest. I'm a little bit fired up because that worked far better than I was expecting. And I've gone a little bit long in this segment, so we'll tease this into the next segment. I want to talk about Zion and playing center, small ball lineup, but I also want to talk about how they generated more three-point looks here, and I loved that about the team because that's a big important thing, and you started to see it, and it is dramatically different from what they did last year. Let's talk about three-point shooting. Zion at the 5 coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Before we get to that, though, today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by Jase Medical. Everyone should feel empowered to care for themselves and their loved ones during the unexpected, like evacuating for a hurricane. If you're evacuating, it probably means your doctor is evacuating too. And if you can't get the medications you need or the consultation you need, you don't want to be in a pinch. And that's where Jase Medical offers the Jase case. The Jase case provides 5 life-saving antibiotics for emergency use and gives you a peace of mind so that you're not just hoping you have access to medication in an emergency. They're going to make sure that you have the medications in hand. They handle everything from the online evaluation to ongoing care and filling it for you. So don't get caught unprepared. Get a Jase case that has 5 antibiotics that are going to treat 50 plus infections. And you can get $20 off these life-saving antibiotics today from Jase Medical by using my code LOCKEDON at checkout at jasemedical.com, Jase, Jase medical.com. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We are here Monday through Friday for y'all, breaking down everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. Coming to you after preseason. For the everydayers, tomorrow, I'm going to explain why the Pelicans need to get off to a fast start. It's actually really important. So seeing them look at least with the starters sharp right now, good. Build some confidence. Get into the right kind of flow of everything. Build that chemistry and get off to a hot start, because that could turn the season around or be make or break more than you realize, and I'll explain why in tomorrow's show. And now for your second listen, go check out Locked On Saints. Ross Jackson breaking down everything black and gold. The Saints back on track, or is New England that bad? I'm going to listen to Ross and see what he has to say with all of that. So we are the Locked On Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So we're talking about the Pelicans offense, a 121.4 offensive rating compared to 113.8 last year. It's a significant improvement. Little things worked. You could see it. Just a ton more movement. Getting out in transition and pushing it. Even Jonas Valanciunas was running in transition. They found ways to involve him more. Backdoor cuts, different things like that. Just to open everything up, and it was so refreshing to see. One of the things that I loved, one of my stats of the game, if you will, here was the Pelicans took 19 three-pointers in the first half. They averaged 30 last year. They took 19 in the first half in this game. Again, we're only looking at the first half because that's when the starters played. 19 three-pointers in the first half. They took 5 corner threes. They made 4 of them. 4 of 5 from the short corner. They didn't average more than 3 made corner threes per game. They just beat that number in a half. They're generating more three-point looks. This has been an emphasis of Willie Green and James Borrego throughout all of training camp, and you just saw it come into play. Part of it is your players. You're not forced, because you have Zion now, you're not forced to use Jackson Hayes, and you need to have a corner three-point shooter, so he was often kind of miscast in that role. And he's not a three-point shooter, let alone a corner three-point shooter. But you saw guys like Jordan Hawkins there, Herb Jones there, Herb hitting 2 corner threes. CJ was trying to get in there. Jordan Hawkins was trying to get in there. If you go back and rewatch that game, and you can usually do this on NBA.com/stats, you can click on the stats and see video of everything. It's really great. They basically had 2 players in the corner on every single action and possession. There was always at least an open corner three-point shooter, or a guy you could get the ball to, or they were trying to kind of make it look like they were trying to get the ball there. Corner threes space the defense out. It pulls help defenders away from the paint. And what I loved from Zion was if he went into the paint and drew that help defender, there's a guy to the left corner, there's a guy to the right corner, the outlets, so that he doesn't get into trouble. Same thing for Brandon Ingram. They need to take more three-pointers, but as I've said, they're never going to just rip, shots from volume, because Zion scores inside. BI likes to get in there with his mid-range and everything. But if you put the right guys out there for those open threes, it works. And it worked really well in this game. The numbers bear it out. 5 corner threes attempted in the first half. They made 4 of them. They did not make more than 3. It was, I think, 2.7 is the number, corner threes per game last season. In one half, you already beat that number. If they can continue this, that's where your three-point volume comes from. And those are one of the most efficient shots in the NBA. It's worth 3 points, but it's actually a shorter shot than from the above the break part of the three-point line. That's why it's called the short corner. So in theory, you make those at a higher rate because it's shorter, it's easier. And it freezes the defense. They did a really good job of creating those looks, and it's nice to see what the Pelicans have been working on in training camp really translating to the actual NBA court while they're out there. And then the off-ball movement, guys catching, shooting, moving, all of that just made the offense look so much better. What also looked well, and I was really curious about this, and I wasn't quite sure, was going to be small ball lineup with Zion at the 5. I said they're kind of playing small ball a little bit by necessity just because they don't have a rebounding, rim protecting big that can defend on the perimeter or get out and run. It's just not Jonas Valanciunas and how he plays. So you're going to kind of, do what you have. And Zion at the 5 is there. I worried about rebounding. I worried about some shooting there too, but it worked. And the lineup was interesting. It was Zion at the center spot, but it was Kyra Lewis Jr. It was CJ McCollum and Kyra Lewis Jr. in the backcourt, Dyson Daniels and Najee Marshall on the wing, kind of the power forward spot, and then Zion. This lineup got out and ran and pushed it. You have some really strong defenders out there in Dyson Daniels and to a lesser extent, Najee. But what I like about this lineup is all of them can play in transition. That's a fast group, right? Najee hustles. Dyson Daniels is fantastic in transition with his long strides and really good size. Kyra Lewis Jr. is just super fast. CJ is your shooter and can run the offense in the half court in addition to Zion, and Zion is Zion. So when you have Najee Marshall being, the knife, right, and going in and getting steals and fighting for the ball and creating those fast break opportunities, and everyone starts zipping down the court, they were scoring super easy. I won't have the lineup data until tomorrow, and I'll take a look at it, and I'll probably share it in the Locked On Pelicans Insiders group. The link to join that is down below if you want, because I'm really curious to see this, of how did that lineup do, and I'd be willing to bet they forced turnovers a lot and they scored at a really high rate because they were just playing in transition. I think that lineup missed one shot. Okay. The seeds of that are there. Can you do that long term? Probably not, but can you deploy that as kind of a Warriors-esque death lineup on occasion? Yeah, maybe. And just blitz opponents with it? That would be cool. And the early returns of that lineup were really good. They're shooting there. Kyra shot near 50% from 3 last year. Dyson's shot has looked better. CJ can do it, but in run going to be where they kind of make their money with a lineup like that. The fact that lineup was so effective and Najee Marshall didn't make a shot in the first half says something. The fact that CJ shot 2 of 6 and the offense still looked that good wasn't bad. I'm liking what we're seeing from this group. The defense still looked good in the first half. I like that defensive lineup of just stifling opponents and then just getting out and running and blitzing them. The rebounding was okay. It wasn't amazing, but this team, for playing small a lot of the time, and Jonas was very good in this game too. He had 8 defensive boards, held the Orlando Magic to just 6 offensive rebounds and limited their second chance points. That'll work. Everything they did out there is going to be okay. Or at least it was in this game. Now, we've got a couple more preseason games to go to figure that all out. But the early returns of the offense, just the off-ball movement, the generating more three-point looks, Zion at the 5 was great. Loved what we saw. Don't care about the second half. Don't care that they lost the game because that's not what matters. As I said, process-driven, not results, and we were seeing the process, and then the results came from a good process, and that's how you buy into all of this. So coming up next, let's talk more about Herb Jones, Kyra Lewis Jr., and other notes from this game. That's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Before we get to that, though, today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by FanDuel. Snap into action this NFL season and NBA season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose, after you place a $5 bet. So if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. They have spreads, player props, over-unders. They also have the futures. Victor Wembanyama looked awesome. If you want to get in on his odds for Rookie of the Year, maybe like Chet Holmgren, that was a fun battle on Monday night in NBA preseason, you can do that. So visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn and kick off the NFL season, tip off the NBA season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL and the official sportsbook of Locked On. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen. Today, and every day. We are here Monday through Friday for y'all, breaking down everything you want to know about this Pelicans team, the #1 Pelicans podcast. If you want to interact with me more, get some inside info, some other stats. I was sharing things before the game that I was hearing at the arena. Join the Locked On Pelicans Insiders group. The link is down below on subtext. You can text me. I'm going to text you. You can text me directly back. Ask me your questions. I'll share what I can. I'm going to try and get some of the numbers on that lineup and share it with all y'all and see what's going on with this team. Twitter kind of sucks. Interact with me there. Look, it's $4.99 a month, but there's a 14-day free trial. It's a great time to join. If you don't like it, that's okay. The show's still going to be free and 5 days a week for y'all. And if you just want to support me without doing anything else, become an everydayer. Listen Monday through Friday. All y'all who told me you listen to Locked On, that it's your first listen every day, or that you're an everydayer at the arena when I was walking around, I appreciate that. Say hi if you see me out there. It's a lot of fun talking with all y'all and sharing this passion with you. So let's wrap up today's show talking about other just strong performances, right? I'm very happy with what we saw from the Pelicans in this game. Zion Williamson, 12 points on 4 of 8 shooting, getting to the free throw line a lot. 5 assists. The court gravity's there, more off-ball movement, perfect. Brandon Ingram, 14 points on 12 shots. One thing to note that I liked from him was in 17 minutes of action, he took 3 3-pointers. He needs to take more threes. There was one possession where he kind of just went up, realized he had some space, and took the open 3-pointer. That's not something he normally does. For a team that, again, needs to generate more 3-point looks, that's a really nice little tweak to his shot selection that I think will go a real long way. The other guy, though, that impressed me the most here, I think might be Herb Jones. Dude was aggressive. This is the right way to use Herb Jones. And if you want to end that debate, Herb, of should you start, should Trey Murphy start, Herb did a really good job of this. I told you over the final 25 games or so of the regular season, he was shooting about 45% from 3. He took 3 3-pointers in here. He took under 3 per game last year. He just took 3 in 16 minutes of action, and he made 2 of them. He's 2 of 3 corner threes off of little Zion actions, right? He was just there in the corner. Zion kicked it out to him. He felt comfortable enough to take that shot, took it, and made it. Perfect. Cutting off ball, driving in transition, scoring in multiple ways, and still playing his defense, which, by the way, he doesn't get enough credit for, because if you look at the NBA GM survey, which just came out, which we may or may not have time to get to on the show, he gets no love as one of the best defensive players in the league, and he looked sharp in this game. Other things that I think are worth noting, Kira Lewis Jr. was the first sub in. Came in for Zion, actually, along with Najee Marshall. 9 points on 4 of 10 shooting, 1 of 4 from 3. He's still finding his way. He got 23 and a half minutes of run here. I've heard that he's not going to be in the rotation to start the year. If you're looking at a 10-man rotation, he probably doesn't fit in, but I think they're really maybe hoping that he will get some run in preseason and really impress people. He's still really fast. You've got to shoot better than 4 of 10, 1 of 4. But there's still a lot of potential there. And if you can, he's useful in the right lineup. I don't know if you could have put Jose in that lineup, that small ball lineup with Zion at the 5. Do you need a guy like Kira Lewis Jr. that can at least drive to the rim and finish around there? I think the answer to that might be yes. Jordan Hawkins struggled shooting. 4 of 14 from the field, 1 of 6 from 3, just 9 points. But look, I was happy with that little action they did. That misdirection of Dyson Daniels cuts, kick it out to Jordan Hawkins, just pass him. That's a real good guy to have. You saw his off-ball movement there. He tried to show you that he's more than just a 3-point shooter. He's a rookie. It's going to take him some time. There's a lot more physicality to his game than I think we realized originally. He's not as bad of a rebounder as I thought either. And he makes just quick decisions and movements, and I like that from him. So I think he's going to be just fine. I loved what we saw from Dyson Daniels, getting out, running, trying to score, using his size, his physicality. That was a real great thing. Rebounded well, dished the ball well. I think he's going to play a very, very big role this year. But I do think it is worth noting that Kira Lewis Jr. came in before him. But that also might be that they know Kyra's not going to get minutes later on, so you need to give him these minutes now. We'll see if the rotation changes as preseason goes on. And we got another preseason game on Thursday as they travel to Houston to take on the Rockets. After that game, like right after that game, I'm just going to go live on YouTube. We'll do the live show and recap it, and I'll chat with all y'all. It'll basically just be like the Thursday night live show, just later is what we'll end up doing. Just knock it out that way. So we'll have fun. I'll be able to interact with y'all with all of that. And it's been fun interacting with all of y'all today. I enjoy this so much. It's nice to recap and watch an actual basketball game. Offense looked good. We're going to talk more about it. Tomorrow's show, though, why the Pelicans need to get off to a fast start. There are some things that I am worried about. I'll explain what those are, why getting off to a fast start's important, has to do with their schedule, has to do with the luxury tax, ownership, trade assets, all of the above, even Luka Doncic and the Dallas Mavericks too. So make sure you become an everydayer if you're not already, and don't miss that show because the season can be determined like right off the bat. And we also got a good update on Trey Murphy that I'll throw in there too, which maybe helps them get off to a fast start. So this has been the Locked On Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Jake Madison, at Nola Jake on Twitter. I'll be back with y'all tomorrow.